Welcome to Percolating Thoughts. So, this episode, Belle and I wanted to hit on relationships, just any kind of relationships, and get into that whole spiel. Earlier on in our series, like season one, that was like, let's see, probably April or like late March, we did a a podcast about friendships, and we got a little bit into relationships there, but we felt like we could really kind of expand on that. Now, Belle, what, I guess, so you just recently got into a new relationship. How do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so Jeremy and I have known each other since, really middle school, but high school, like senior years when we like connected, kind of fell apart, stayed in touch through college. And side note, Jeremy is in the army, which is why kind of things have been on like the wayside for a while, why I was apprehensive. Wasn't fully sold on the idea of like the long distance unsureness of it all, um which is like you're so valid if you're also in the same spot that it's a hard thing to decide and make that decision. And like that's something that'll affect you, or as long as they're in the army or military in general. But yeah, so we started dating in December. It's been 6 months as of last weekend. And yeah, it's been good. I think when I first started dating him, I started therapy at the same time. Because I think that when you get into a relationship that you're more serious about, or you're at an age where it's like, okay, I could be married in 5 years. Even if you might not see that with that person, I think it's really important to start therapy at the same time, because a lot of those like issues can come up in your relationships that you don't realize. And I think that's something that we have had growing pains because of, but we are working through them. And I think it's really made us better people to understand like um each other and talk it out. And so I'm a big advocate for starting therapy when you start a relationship. But Jeremy's great. Love him. Slay King. And yeah.
Side note, kind of going back to how like you were apprehensive, just to kind of tell the audience, like when Belle and I were going through our last semester in or at Columbia or the University of Missouri rather, um I remember she would ask me, she'd be like, I'm just kind of, or she wouldn't ask me, she'd tell me, I'm just kind of worried, that sort of thing. And I'm like, you know what? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Now might not be the right time. It might be it, and then it might be the right time,
Yeah.
vice versa. Like, um, and some might argue like there never is a right time. You just gotta go for it. Um, but I just remember having those conversations, like sitting in Calle Ocho, and then just kind of, yeah, so this is what happened, and I'm like, whoa, like something I was not expecting. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, so Jeremy and I talked last night, and I'm like, okay, stuff like that. But yeah, no, and just to kind of give you guys a background of my relationship, which is not the first time I have, um, Justin and I have been dating for 5.5 years. We started dating when we were 16.
Where's the ring?
Where's the ring? Literally, I've been telling him that. I'm like, I'm kind of ready to get married, but that's a whole um other thing.
Anywho,
Anywho,
they've been
um,
dating since they were 16.
yeah, we've been dating since we were 16. We've had our trials and tribulations, and we've definitely learned from them. Now, when you spoke about like the therapy thing, I was
Yeah.
like, I was like, uh-oh, like Justin and I have been like cold turkeying it the entire time.
That's
And there were,
okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're still here, so
Yeah.
but there were like even bouts in our relationship where I was in therapy and I was like kind of working out that sort of thing. So yeah. Um now
Keep
Belle.
going. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was gonna ask you, what do you think um makes that like needs to be contributed to have a healthy relationship?
This is something I'm really bad at and something that Jeremy and I talk about a lot, but I think it's being open, and that's not easy. Like you can say that out loud, but that's not something that you're going to be perfect at. Especially if you are a more closed off person, you have been your whole life, and you have trauma and you're valid in that. But I think like something I've learned and something I'm still working on and something I think is really important is that openness and not shutting down. Um, but it's a work in progress for me at least. Because there are things where you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I'm just gonna let it slide. You let it fester, and then it just like ruins the day. Um, and then you have to talk it out anyways because that's how you grow and do better is talking it out and figuring it out. Um, but that's also hard to like obviously these are relationships as you're getting like older. When you're in high school that doesn't I don't want to say that doesn't matter as much,
Yeah,
but it's not the same as like 16 versus 22.
right. No, like in high school, I was like, oh my gosh, like so worried about looking cute for this guy and going out on dates and having a good time and that sort of thing. And now that I've like even like transitioning to college and
Yeah.
graduating from college, um Justin and I have still like learned a lot about each other and have gone through things with each other and we've grown from that.
Mhm.
Um, but that being said, a lot of what's contributed to that, for me, in terms of a healthy relationship, is trust and also communication.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, you gotta have it. It's and like communication and openness can go hand in hand because your partner doesn't know what you're thinking about, you know?
Yes.
That seems like that really hit home for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
also I think it's important that before you continue is that Leah's also technically long distance as well.
yeah. Yeah,
And
no, um, for background, Justin and I went from being right across town to being 2 hours away, and now we're 45 minutes away. So we're getting better, but it's still kind of considered some sort of distance.
yeah.
And we still make time for each other and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that we don't like communicate or we don't talk about things like
Mm.
our daily questions like at night whenever we're winding down and we're getting ready for bed and everything like I'll be like how was your day today and he'll kind of talk on that and I'll do the same and we'll be like what's your favorite part about what was your favorite part about today you know and just stuff like that so even if you had a bad day or hey let me tell you about my day that sort of thing and that's always like the highlight of my night and I think
That's
sometimes like reflecting on it I definitely take it for granted but the past uh, I don't know it sounds repetitive but it really and truly is it works like it's
yeah.
really nice um but yeah that's
And
what
I think everyone can learn from that too. I think we just kind of go through our days and forget to, talk about it. And it's good for you to talk about it, even if it was a shitty day, because, you're not holding it in. You're like, hey, today was shit because this happened at work, or
yeah
I couldn't find what I wanted at the store, this, that, and the third. Didn't plans fell through.
hmm
Um, so no, I love that.
what so have you and Jeremy had um not a fight, but any really big arguments?
Um, Last weekend, kind of, I wouldn't say it wasn't like a fight or an argument. It was more like a buildup of like I wasn't voicing how I felt in certain situations, and it kind of all came bubbling up at a dinner with friends, and so that night we just sat in the car and we talked about it and explained, because you also have to remember, like, in a lot of relationships there's like, and you have an introvert and you have an extrovert, or one of you is in the middle, and I am the introvert, surprise, of the relationship. And I think like that can sometimes, even in my friendships too, come off as like, oh, Belle won't want to do this because it's with a lot of people, or I don't want Belle to have to come to something and she's just going to sit and read, or she's going to like not fully participate. And there was some other stuff we talked about too, but um so like things like that where it's like getting on the same page. Like I do want the option to go. I don't want,
To have
that
to.
decision made for me.
Yeah.
Um, but also recognizing too that like your partner is trying to do their best interest, and they're like do everything in your best interest. And um, sometimes that's really hard to like recognize when you're like upset about it. But I think something else that comes up too in younger relationships, I know Jeremy and I've talked about it. My cousin and I just talked about it this week and about her and her boyfriend, is you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard too, because you're like, I want to go to dinner. I want to spoil you. I want to do this or do that in the third. That, sometimes one goes overboard while the other one is like, hey, we should tone it down, this, that, and the other. So I think like that's something else, either other than openness and trust too, I think is like creating those boundaries of, hey, maybe we just do one date night a week.
Yeah.
Or like Jeremy and I started cooking at, like when he's home for the weekends, we started doing one dinner at home, like that we make together,
Oh.
things like that. And so I think like those are conversations that we've had, not necessarily arguments, but where my own, trauma has flared up and like having to work through that. What about you guys?
Yeah, no, so Justin and I have had our array of like big arguments, and it's really weird because when I get mad, I don't argue. Like I kind of just like I hold it in and then I'll like be short with people. Yep. And then sometimes I'll cry. It just kind of depends on what's happening. But the most
Yeah.
recent scenario that I can think of where I was really like genuinely about to kill him was so I just moved into my post grad apartment and everything.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, it's been so fun. And Justin was kind of helping me move in, build things, put things up on the wall, that sort of thing. And this goes hand in hand with when my vehicle got stolen a few months ago because I had my tools in it. And my drill battery not my drill battery, my drill battery charger got stolen, but the drill and the battery itself did not. And so I was just using the last of the juices. I was like, I'm not going to be needing the drill that often, but Justin was using the drill. And I was like, I'll just get a new one whenever this one runs out because, I mean, it was fully charged. It had a lot of juice left, but he just kept using it. And um, uh, we were hanging up pictures, or he was getting ready to hang up pictures, and he was like, the drill just died. And I was like, okay, well, can we use nails? And we're working around it, and blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, no, I think we need to go to get another drill. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if we can find a replacement charger, like a 12-volt charger, instead
Yeah.
of just the full drill. And which I don't know why I didn't think about that sooner, but we went to Walmart, Home Depot, could not find the charger, and someone was like, yeah, if it's a 12-volt battery, you have to have the same brand charger than what the battery is. And my drill was from Amazon. So it was just like a cheapy drill from Amazon. So nobody
Yeah.
had that. So I was like, you're telling me I need to buy a whole brand new drill. So
Yeah.
fun, so cute, so quirky. That's not cheap. And this entire time, Justin's like, let's go get a new drill. Let's just get a new drill. Blah, 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 blah. We're going to go to Home Depot and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm looking online at like the cheapest drills at Home Depot. And I'm like, oh my God. Like even the nice one, like Black and Decker
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, were about $100. And I had just had a conversation with him like, hey, the first few months I'm here, I'm going to be paying like two rents, two electricities. It's gonna be a minute before I get settled into what I'm getting paid and am able to save and make expenses like that. And he was like, okay, I understand. And so for him to be like, let's go to Home Depot and get a drill there that we're only going to use once, um, was very out of pocket. And so I was just like, I don't want to go to Home Depot. I don't want to go to Home Depot. Let's just get this cheap hand drill here. That'll be fine. And he was like, no, we're going to Home Depot. And so I was like, okay. And we went to Home Depot and I was literally walking up and down the drill aisle having an anxiety attack because I was like, I don't want to buy any of these fucking drills and blah, 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 blah. And so finally I asked, like I pulled an employee aside and I was like, one of your cheapest drills. Like that's all I need. I don't need it for anything big. And he was like, oh, this Ryobi one that's $59. And I'm like, I spent $25 on my Amazon drill and it
Yeah.
worked fine. It was great. 5-star reviews. But I'm like, $59? Okay. Yeah, sure. And that may sound like really cheap for me right now,
Oh,
but or cheap of me, but I'm like, I'm gonna use it once. Um
yep.
so he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I told you I didn't want to come here. And he was like, I'll buy it. And I was like, no, no. And so I bought the drill and we get in the car and he goes, what's the matter? And I said, I explicitly told you what I didn't want to do and we went ahead and did it. And now I'm out $60 for a drill I'm gonna use one time. And he was like, I told you I could have paid for it. And I was like, that's not the point. Like this drill is living at my place and is being used for my things. Why would you pay for it? Yeah, we're in a relationship, but you're not living here with me and we're not married, so it's not considered our drill yet, you know? And so he was like, well, I mean, I don't know. It was just
Yeah.
I was irritated and definitely didn't handle the situation well. But the big thing was like I communicated money to you
Yeah.
and I feel like you didn't listen to that and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so we were able to civilly speak on that after the fact um
Yeah.
and kind of calm down from that. But we're fine. Um
Yeah.
long story short,
Yeah.
money
You know,
is
I
money can be a big thing.
yeah. And well, and I think like a lot of that kind of transitioning to marriage is like something that you start to figure out too is like I personally do not want the same bank account.
Yeah.
I want we can have one joint bank account where we, do savings for the kids, savings for vacation, and then we both contribute to
Like
a
Bill.
bills account and a mortgage account, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think, and not everybody's going to agree with this, is that my money is my money, your money is your money. You
Yeah.
spend it on what you want, I spend it on what I want. I don't want there to be a control over it. And maybe that is also, my own, I don't want to say trauma, but my own upbringing that makes me think that way because I never, no offense to Jeremy, want a man to have control of all of the assets and then
Yeah.
something happens. Hopefully not, but something happens and you don't have that
Like to
in your
fall.
name anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe in joint accounts, but I do not believe in
Um, a
full
couple.
we're
Yeah.
in the same boat. My checks, your checks going in the same thing. Because I also think like we all budget differently in our
Yeah.
heads. And if we're like, oh, I want to buy this sweatshirt, but now I don't know how much of like my money I've spent. So I
Yeah,
did that too. Like I never want to spend your money if I already spent my entire check for the month or something like that.
right.
Um, but I think too on marriage, something that I don't want to say has been weighing heavy, but something that I've been thinking about recently is no shade to anybody. Um, the idea that when you get married, you can't really hang out with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Um, because you're like, oh, I'm married. I'm with them now. I can't do separate things. That is no, again, no offense. That is bogus.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all I have to say on that. That's it's bogus because I think you're a separate person and you're together.
Yeah.
You can go on a girls' trip. You can go hang out with your friends. Just because you're married doesn't mean there's not a balance. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
I don't have a lot of friends who are married or married yet. I actually have a friend who's getting married in December. And so I'm very, very excited for that.
Yeah.
And excited for her. And I love her and her husband. And I only wish them the best. But she's still like every once in a while she'll reach out. She'll be like, "Hey, do you want to go out and get some drinks? Do you want to go out to dinner?" And that sort of thing. And I'd be like, yeah, let's do it, or let's plan for it. And even then, like it's very easy to be in a relationship and have a friend who's married because then you can do like double dates or
Yeah.
stuff like that, and sometimes it works out, but other than that, it also helps to have a partner who's not controlling over who your friends are and
Mhm.
who you hang out with, where you go, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that luxury, and I'm so sorry if you don't. And hopefully you know that there's better out there.
Yeah.
But um
I mean, Jeremy's downstairs with one of my best friends right now because he was like, she should hang out with us since she's going to be alone today.
yeah, no, and
Love
that's
it.
yeah, that's super sweet of him. I was gonna ask you about that, but no, that's super sweet, and I think that's a big thing in a relationship and everything. And um that being said, getting into that, sometimes you might not like your partner's friends. Sometimes they might not like your friends, but it's okay to
Yeah.
be a civil person and have surface level conversations. And it's okay to let
Yeah.
your partner experience life outside of your relationship. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can be hard, but at the end of the day, like I like okay, last night was a great example. I was gonna go over to Jared's friend's house after work, and then they wanted to go out. I didn't want to. I was like, I'm not in the mood. I haven't been drinking all day like you guys. Like I was just looking to hang out, not like a whole shebang.
Right.
And Jared's like, well, I can just like we can just go home if you come up. And I was like, that's not fair. Like you're with them and and that's okay. Like it's okay that we are doing separate things. I will not be offended by it. Like I'm making that decision for myself. And I had a great night in. I started MILF Manor, which is a crazy show. Um, ate dinner, hung out on the couch, whatever. And I think like you just recognize that is that it's okay not to do, even though you want to, it won't always be like that. You won't always hang out together, be together every single time y'all are out.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay. Like I don't expect him, I mean, even though he's great about it, like if I hang out with somebody that he's gonna be there, even though he usually always is. Um, because you know, you don't have to be. I don't care. You want to come? Great. You don't want to come? I'm not going to sit here and yell at you about, okay, bye. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think, yeah, it's also a balance of that. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with like friendships as well, is which can be a lot harder to learn than in relationships of like, okay, they have other friends. They're not just going to hang out with me every weekend.
Hmm.
And recognizing that, maybe you don't want to be with those friends because maybe you don't love them or they're too extroverted for you or whatever, and you're valid in that. That's something I think like you learn a lot in college because you're not just growing up with like your core group of friends that you had in middle and high school. But yeah,
Right. And then another thing is too, I guess we can get into a different point of view or scenario, but hanging out with your friends too much where you're not contributing time to your relationship. Um, Personally, I felt like we were having that for a while, especially when I left for college. Like I felt
yeah,
like I was like, you don't talk to me, you're always out golfing, you're always out, with the guys or over with them. But no, there would be times where he would hang out with his friends and I'd be like, "Hey, like where the heck are you? I feel like I'm not talking to you or spending enough time with you." Yeah. And so
fine, fine.
yeah. And so even like cuz and that's not anything on him. It's just we were in a relationship where we were learning and growing. And yeah, I want you to
Yeah,
spend time with your friends, but I also want you to realize what your priorities are. So instead of being at the guy's house like 4 nights of the week and then
yeah,
seeing me like for 2 hours of the day, like let's balance it a little bit more. Let's be a little more realistic.
yeah,
What do you want? Um, but other than that, like I feel like we've definitely gone through our fair share of those conversations. But he has also like his friends, he lived with his friends for a bit and they're kind of like in their adult journey and they're trying to figure things out. So that has a lot to do with it too. But
yeah,
I mean, that being said, that doesn't mean they can't hang out or they can't do things together because they still do
yeah,
things together. It's just not like they're obsessed with each other.
yeah,
So, but yeah.
yeah. I think too, as like I told Leah I wanted to put this like conversation off for a bit until I was in a relationship. Um, but I think of the two of us, I also have more of an experience, unfortunately, of what dating in college is like. And that's also like why I started therapy because it was like I didn't want those things that had happened in college to like affect me in an outside college relationship.
Yeah.
Um, because I think like we just are in a culture of hookups, of not really meeting people, like no shade to like Twitter, okay, Tinder, Bumble, whatever. I did that too, but that there's no, we're like in this, we're in this, sorry, um,
We're
of disingenuous like meeting or like our parents would have met, and
yeah.
I think like too, it's harder to date in college because of that, because we are surrounded by this culture of not committing or having situationships. And I think if you're in that situation, been there, done that, I get it. But I think a lot of it comes down to reflecting on, what you want, your values, yourself, because at the end of the day, like, are you hurting yourself more from that
Hmm.
or are you gaining something? And I think not a lot of people would say the latter. And but it can also be really hard because you're like, oh, my friends are going to the bars and they're meeting guys, so I should do that too. But I think you also have to learn the balance of what that is and when it's unhealthy, because I didn't do that.
Hmm.
And I think had I would have had a much less chaotic college experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I was in a little bit of a different scenario in college, obviously, being in, one relationship. And to be honest, like and I haven't necessarily talked about this with Justin, but I'm sure he knows just as well. But like the temptations of like dating life in college are very strong. Um, and it's like being in a long distance relationship. A lot of people say don't go into college being in a relationship. But at that point in our lives, Justin and I knew that we were going to be together and that we wanted to be together, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and so even that, like working through that was certainly hard because sometimes he'd get invited to parties and there would be girls there and I'd be like, what the hell, you know? Or like just get jealous. Or even like I'd be out and I'd be like, hey, so this person wanted to go out with a group of friends, and he'd be like, be careful, you know? Just
Yeah.
stuff like that. Um, and he would tell me if he was uncomfortable and I'd tell him if I was uncomfortable with something. So
Yeah.
just like communication is a big thing. But that being said, the stereotype that you can't go into college being in a long distance relationship, it can work. So
Yeah.
you just gotta have the right person, I guess. But yeah,
Correct.
um,
It is possible.
it's possible.
Slay.
Anyway, so that was our talk about relationships. If you guys have any questions for us, any suggestions for us, or comments, concerns, please feel free to email us, comment in our comment sections on like YouTube or even on Instagram. DM us, whatever. We love to hear from you guys, regardless of what the topic is about. Cheers!
Cheers.